I'll say this. In 7 years, after meeting thousands of women, I can think of maybe five instances where a woman was flat out unreceptive towards me, and I won her over. If she shuts you down, tells you to go away, tells you she's not interested, tells you she has a boyfriend, move on. Seriously. Get over it and move on. You are wasting your time. I don't care how special you think she is. There is another one out there who is just as special, who will be receptive to you. The two most common time things with unreceptive women are the friend zone and women in relationships. The friend zone occurs when a woman has categorized you as a friend and not a potential lover. For women, these categories are almost always mutually exclusive. A man is either a friend or a potential sexual partner, but rarely both. There are exceptions, but they are rare. Once instead of it, the friend zone is almost impossible to get out. And if you do ever get out, it's likely not due to anything you tried or did anyway. Why? Because a man who does not act on his sexual desires is a man who is needy, lacks vulnerability, and is therefore unattractive. The friend zone typically occurs when a man remains receptive or neutral women but never makes a move or express his interest. Instead, he behaves pleasantly like a good friend would. In his mind, this is great because it means she likes talking to him, laughs at his jokes, etc. But because he's withholding his sexual interest, he's placing himself in her mind firmly in the friend camp. A classic yet painful example of the friend zone happened with a friend of my ex girlfriend. When I met her, she was moving into her new apartment. There were two guys helping her move in. One was a tall fellow who obviously seemed eager to please her and help as much as he could. It didn't take long to recognize that he was quite needy around her and made poor attempts to flirt, which she didn't reciprocate. She, of course, being an attractive girl, wasn't highly invested back, and so I immediately pegged him as in her friend zone. As it turned out, I was right. This guy hated me the whole time I dated her. He was convinced that I was an asshole because he had been so nice to her for so long, and I came along and simply asked her out without giving a shit whether she said yes or not. Funny how that works. A couple years later, after she and I broke up and remained friends, he refused to let her talk about me around him. During this period, he made numerous attempts to get with her, sometimes going as far as making tearful proclamations that he had been in love with her for years. Needless to say, all of these attempts turned her off, and she shut down. It ruined the friendship. They had been friends with each other for over 4 years, and the degree of investment he was showing, even despite his behavior, the fact that he spent 4 years working up the nerve to make a move, communicated a massive degree of neediness and horrible self worth. Obviously, she rejected him again and again. She rejected him, so he became angry, and perceiving me to have been an asshole who didn't treat her well, he decided to try to be an asshole who didn't treat her well either. He went down the road of narcissism and overcompensation. He began to behave disrespectfully towards her, believing that she must have no self respect if she rejected men who treated her so well like he did. And in a growing irony, feeling entitled due to how nice he had been for years, he felt as though he deserved to treat her worse and objectified her to the point where one night he physically tried to force her to kiss him. Needless to say, the friendship was over, as she refused to oversee, as she refused to ever see him again. The friend zone is the biggest possible time sink because most men who are stuck in it entertain fantasies that they are simply waiting for the inevitable to occur. It plays into their fantasies of romance and destiny. Their perspective is that they are the perfect man for her, and one day, and one day When she wakes up and realizes how foolish she is, she'll realize that the lover of her life had been sitting right there by her side all along. This never happens, ever. It's an incredibly arrogant and manipulative mindset to adopt. It's no wonder women see it as so unattractive. If you are in this situation now, you need to get it out of your head and move on immediately. Typically, if men have been friends with a woman for even a month or two without ever explicitly indicating their sexual interest in her, it's likely too late. You must indicate some sort of sexual interest early on, otherwise, the longer you wait, the harder it gets, and the more likely she will become unreceptive to you. Again, ask yourself what waiting 4 years to state your interest in a girl communicates to her. It communicates I am so much more invested in you than in myself than that I expected 4 years working up the nerve to show you my interest. It's extremely unattractive, and chances are she knows. She always knew, which just makes it worse. The second time, think that men often get sucked into a woman that is happily in a relationship. Unlike the friend zone, where men will often waste them away months of years or years, a woman in a relationship will usually only waste a week, few weeks, maybe a few months at the most, but still a time thing is a time thing. A lot of men get hung up on women who are already taken, and rather than cut their losses and move on, they harbor some fantasy that any woman will cheat on her boyfriend, husband, given the right circumstance. This isn't true. And even in the cases that it is true, it's also not worth the time or effort. Waiting around for a woman in a relationship is simply not worth it. Period. Trying to sabotage a woman's relationship so you can swoop in and steal her is not only ineffectual but morally fucked up. It's neediness and narcissism to an extreme degree. What a lot of men don't understand though is that oftentimes married or taken women will still flirt with other men for no other reason than they think it's fun and they like the attention. To some women, flirting is like a hobby, and they see it as harmless fun. If a woman is married or has a boyfriend and seems pretty happy in general and is flirting with me, then I don't take the flirting too seriously. And also struggle a lot with the rejection. I have a boyfriend. Some men seem to get obsessed about whether this is actually true or you're just saying it to reject him. Once again, it's not about whether her statement is factual or not. It's about her intention. The intention is I'm not interested. Take that at face value and move on. Even if she doesn't have a boyfriend, there is no point in trying to win over a girl who is willing to lie about something like that to you. And if she does have a boyfriend, then she's probably happy with him, otherwise she wouldn't have brought it up. And that's really the crux of the matter. Women who have boyfriends, husbands who are willing to cheat on them don't bring up their boyfriends, husbands almost ever. Typically, you'll hear about them either immediately before or immediately after you hook up with them. If they tell you about them right when you meet them, then they are not interested. If they tell you about their boyfriend while they are making out with you in the cab back to your apartment, then she's probably interested. But you don't need me to tell you that. So your mission with unreceptive women is to spot them as quickly as possible and then politely move on. Rejection in this case is often your friend, as well as we'll see later. It's not until you find a woman who is neutral or better than that things begin to get interesting. The goal with neutral women is to get them to stop being neutral as soon as possible. As we mentioned earlier, women who are neutral and who stay natural tend to eventually end up unreceptive. You do this by expressing your vulnerability and your identity to them freely. When you express your truth to women, you will polarize them. They will either become receptive to you or they will make themselves unreceptive. When you express your truth, if you express more investment than them, then they will be not attached to you and will therefore be unreceptive. Also, if you express your truth and there is a high amount of friction between you and her that cannot be overcome, then she'll become unreceptive. If you express your truth and demonstrate not only that you're not needy but also frictionless for her, similar interests, values, life situations, then she'll become very receptive. And when I say very receptive, I mean very. A big misconception, man, is sorry. A big misconception men have is that they think they need to behave in a way that makes every single woman like them, as if women were all the same. This is counterproductive because by altering your behavior to fit whatever you want, it means you are not being vulnerable and therefore you are being needy and unattractive. And unattractive. Other men often stick to plain jokes and safe topics of conversation that end up not polarizing at all for fear of being rejected. This is also a form of hiding one's truth, not showing vulnerability, being overinvested, and therefore not attractive. This is the plight of the highly needy, nice guy. He's afraid of eliciting an emotional response from anybody, especially women, and especially himself. Therefore, he'll play it safe and elicit neutral reactions from women after women. And when women are natural for too long without being polarized, then they will make themselves unreceptive. If there is one thing that narcissistic men accomplish well, it's that they will polarize women quickly. Women will know more or less immediately if they are interested in a narcissistic guy or not because he will be so overbearing and imposing she'll have no chance other than to feel something for him. The problem with the narcissistic man is that the few women who become receptive to him are not the type of women who are pleasant to be around, as they are highly needy themselves. As you can see, neutral women are where so-called game comes into play. Having good game means you can take a woman who is neutral and incite her to become receptive to you quickly. You do this by making yourself vulnerable, sharing yourself unabashedly, and polarizing her one way or the other and being comfortable with either result. For instance, I recently met a beautiful woman in a nightclub. She danced with me but ignored my attempts to get closer to her. She seemed content to dance with me but was not investing any effort in the interaction beyond that. Something that I could easily get stuck dancing with her all night without actually polarizing her. I asked that we go get a drink. I told her I'd like to get to know her a bit better and talk. She obliged. At the bar, the first question out of my mouth is one of my favorite for natural situations. What's your favorite thing in the world? This question will tell me two things: how passionate and self aware she is about her own life, and secondly, if we have anything in common. Women who are not passionate or self aware are dropped very quickly and go meet someone else. Women who share interests with me give me an opportunity to polarize them quickly to being receptive. For instance, if a woman answers Jesus, then I know I'm heading straight for unreceptive right then and there. Not that I had Jesus or anything, but let's just say there is a conflict of interests. This polarization is a good thing, though, even though it ends up with me not getting the girl in the end. We are both better off not being together. And by me eliciting her religiosity early on, we find that out sooner rather than later. In this particular example, at the nightclub, the woman answered traveling and experiencing new cultures. Bingo! I love the travel. I've been to I've been to over 40 countries. I tell her this. Sure enough, within 30 minutes, we were sitting alone together and wrapped in a conversation about grammar and the Russian language. The Russian grammar lesson struck you as an effective pickup tactic. Probably not, but I dig it. And so did she. And she eventually became my girlfriend. My success was about expressing my identity, forcing her to make a decision about me, and letting the chips fall where they may. Finally, we have the receptive women. Finding these are the best because they are the most rewarding interactions while requiring the least amount of effort. When you meet and receptive women, the goal is simple. You escalate. You make a move. You move things forward, assuming you want to, of course. Receptive women who are originally neutral, if you do not make a move and become physical with them quickly enough, they will often drift back to neutral and then to unreceptive permanently. But I found that women who are receptive to you to begin with will usually stay receptive almost indefinitely. I think these are the only rare occasions when you can actually pry yourself out of the friend zone. These are rare circumstances where she was always receptive to you. But for whatever reason, you two weren't able to be together. You had a girlfriend, she moved away for 3 years, etc.